Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are cracking open the pages of a truly terrifying tale. We're diving into a deeply unsettling, meticulously crafted narrative from a recent horror deep dive. This isn't just your standard campfire ghost story, folks. It's a gripping breakdown of deception, survival, and the absolute unknown. We're going to walk through the timeline, dissect the clues, and uncover the ultimate chilling twist of a summer trip gone horribly, horribly wrong. Just sit with that for a second, right? What if the person you're sharing a tent with, the one you're laughing with around a fire, isn't who they say they are? What if they aren't even human? Keep that question pinned in the back of your mind, because it is the absolute anchor of the mystery we're unpacking today. The stakes here are literally life and death.
Act 1. The Village in the Hills.
Okay, let's dive into this setup. It kicks off with a classic trope, but man, the execution is brilliantly grounded in isolation. It centers around 5 college friends: Arav, Kabir, Neil, Tanya, and Ria. Summer vacation has just started and they are itching for a thrill. You know the vibe: trekking, bonfires, the whole shebang. So Neil pitches this idea to head up to his grandparents' village in the hills. The source material describes it as beautiful, surrounded by dense forests, rivers, and these mountains perpetually draped in mist. Sounds totally idyllic, right? The perfect getaway for 5 friends looking for an adventure. But wow, there is a massive disconnect between what the group expects and the terrifying reality of this place. They arrive, Neil's grandparents are super warm and welcoming, but as the sun dips, Arav notices something incredibly unsettling. The village completely shuts down. I mean, it's not even 7 p.m. and every single door is bolted shut. The streets are entirely empty, and this dead, heavy silence falls over everything. Neil tries to brush it off like, oh, it's just normal mountain village stuff, but you can already feel the tension creeping in.
Later that evening, they're just hanging out in the courtyard, and Tanya innocently asks if there are any haunted places nearby. The grandmother's face just drops. She turns deadly serious. She points out toward the forest, across to an old campsite, and drops a bombshell. That specific site has been completely abandoned for 20 long years.
And the reason why is absolutely chilling. The grandmother, literally trembling at this point, recounts this warning. 5 kids went camping, only 4 returned. The 5th was never found. The camp was shut down immediately after that, and locals started hearing strange voices, seeing inexplicable things in the woods. Now, any logical person hears that and stays far, far away. But our group, they totally dismiss it. They think it's just a ghost story meant to scare tourists. To them, a forbidden, abandoned campsite is the ultimate adventure jackpot.
Act 2. Midnight at the Ruins. Completely overriding Neil's hesitation, the group decides they're going to sneak out, spend one night out there, and be back before morning. They pack up their gear and step straight into the darkness. Let's map out exactly how fast this situation goes off the rails. It starts at 11 p.m. The walk is super ominous, owls hooting, bats swooping. By the time they reach the broken wooden ruins, it's pitch black. They pitch the tent, get a fire going, but at 2 a.m., the vibe completely shatters. This terrifying human-sounding scream rips through the jungle. Arv points his flashlight into the trees, and boom, the light just dies. Total darkness. They scramble into the tent in sheer panic. And then at 4 a.m., the final blow. They wake up, and Kabir is gone.
So, the crucial point is, how did they let it get to this? If we treat this like a cold case file, it's a textbook example of normalcy bias. That's our brain's fatal tendency to rationalize terrifying anomalies as normal just so we don't freak out. Earlier in the night, Ria literally said she felt someone watching them from the dark, and Kabir mocks her. He says she watches too many horror films. Later, Arav actually finds wet footprints in the mud, but chillingly, they weren't walking toward the camp, they were pointing away, into the jungle, like something was already there waiting for them. The group blamed it on a wild animal. But the most horrifying part? After that scream at 2 a.m. while huddled inside their tent, they saw a human shadow pacing outside. But all 5 of them were inside the tent. They literally ignored every single investigative breadcrumb. So when 4 a.m. rolls around and Kabir is missing, they rush outside. They're shouting his name, scanning the trees, but Kabir is nowhere. Instead, Neil looks down and spots something that sends them into pure, unadulterated panic. Deep drag marks etched right into the soil, leading directly away from the campsite and into the black woods. Something had taken him.
Act 3. The Impossible Photograph.
Fearing for their own lives, the 4 remaining friends absolutely bolt. They sprint all the way back to the village as the sun comes up, just bursting into the grandparents' house. The grandmother is terrified seeing them like this. They confess the whole thing, that they snuck out, and that their fifth friend, Kabir, was taken. But the grandmother's face turns stark white. She looks at them, totally bewildered, and whispers, "What are you talking about? You four are here." The friends are stunned. They're insisting, "No, 5 of us arrived at the house." The grandmother, shaking, leads them inside and pulls out this old, dusty, archival photograph. It's from that exact same summer camp, taken 20 years ago, showing the original 5 college students. Tanya looks at it and lets out a piercing scream, because standing right there in a 20-year-old photograph is the boy who vanished decades ago, and his face is completely, unquestionably identical to their friend, Kabir. Now, what's really interesting about this is the massive psychological blind spot it reveals. As the grandmother asks how long they've actually known Kabir, this horrible realization washes over them. The 4 of them had been friends for years, lifelong buddies. But Kabir? He had miraculously just integrated into their group a mere 3 months ago. They barely knew his background. The entity terrorizing them out in the woods wasn't hunting Kabir, it was Kabir. It lured them straight back to its hunting grounds.
Act 4. The shape-shifting betrayal.
Imagine realizing you essentially invited a 20-year-old supernatural predator on vacation with you. They are paralyzed. And then the story delivers this final masterful stroke of suspense. Arav's phone buzzes. A text message from an unknown number. It's an image taken earlier that very night at the campsite. In the foreground, it's Arav, Neil, Tanya, and Ria by the tent. But in the background, lurking in the shadows behind them, is Kabir, and his eyes are pitch solid black.
Beneath the terrifying image is just a single line of text. Next summer camp, I'll be back. The malicious intent just hangs heavily in the air. The entity is taunting them, promising that the cycle it started 20 years ago is nowhere near finished.
Arav is completely terrified. He turns to Neil, shoving the screen toward him, expecting his friend to freak out too. But Neil doesn't scream. He doesn't panic. Actually, Neil looks at the message and slowly begins to smile. And right before Arav's eyes, Neil's face begins to twist, shift, and morph until he is staring directly into the face of Kabir. The entity didn't just stay in the woods. It shapeshifted. It had already infiltrated the surviving group. And that brilliantly illustrates the true horror of this narrative. The ultimate violation of trust. The story cuts off right there, on a massive cliffhanger of betrayal. It takes our basic human desire for adventure and turns it into an inescapable trap, leaving us to wonder if anyone even made it out of that house alive. So looking at the terrifying trail of evidence we've just laid out, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder. Who will be